Hi, my name is Leighton Jin. I'm the Director of Development for the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival, also known as AmDocs, which will be March 21st to 25th. We have two terrific filmmakers, Jason and Blue, and they're going to be premiering their latest feature.
Yeah, so Dusk follows Chelli Look, a leather bag designer. It's been 10 years since her sister was murdered, and she's going through a time of grief and healing while also running a business, a leather bag design business. And she ultimately needs to reconcile the direction that her brand is going with the legacy of her sister. And it all kind of comes together in this artistic portrait of a artist going through grief.
Now, how did you guys come across her?
Yeah, we are commercial directors by trade. So we make a living directing commercials. And in 2016, maker documentaries, like short 1 to 2 minute, like documentaries about makers and creatives were popular. And we were looking to have one of those on our reel. So we actually were invited to an open studio that Chelli was hosting through a mutual connection. And we went into her space and we thought her aesthetic was interesting visually. And we were captivated by that. So we asked her if we could film like a 1 minute promo thing just to put on our commercial reel. And so she said yes, that would be interesting. So we got together to have coffee first just to meet. And we asked her a little bit about her story. And we said, how did you get into this? Tell us about yourself. And she told us the story of her sister. And that was surprising to us. I don't think we fully understood it in depth at that point. But it was really deep and powerful to see how much the legacy of her sister was rooted in her creative process. And so we started filming, thinking it was going to maybe be a short thing for our commercial reel, and pretty quickly realized there was much more to the story, and that we kept filming and kept filming. And then 6 years later, we have a 92-minute documentary. So we really worked to unpeel the layers in that story and kind of, I guess, stumbled into or accidentally made ourselves a feature-length documentary.
How does making a film like this challenge you? Because I know you do a lot of commercial work and you also do some films, but
Yeah.
this one sounds very, very inspiring and also heavy both ways.
Mhm.
Can you talk about how that challenged you and what challenges you guys did face in bringing this to
Mhm.
screen?
Yeah, I'd say on top of, the kind of typical challenges of indie filmmaking, where you are doing it all on your own and you're trying to get funding and you're, trying to bring on collaborators to help you along the process. I think the biggest challenge for us was coming from a narrative background. We really came into the documentary process realizing like, oh, we're following this story and we're seeing these things. We were, Chelli was so gracious to welcome us into this very vulnerable place and this very intimate season of her life and this intimate journey. And we were making observations about what she was experiencing from our outside perspective, but it was her journey and her story. And so we documentary is all about letting the story unfold versus creating it, from a narrative perspective and trying to force things to happen. And so that created this really beautiful kind of almost therapeutic dance where we asked her questions, made some observations, and then just let her process those things. And now looking back, she's said to us, that a lot of those questions really did help her in her process, in that journey where she kind of considered these things, considered things that maybe she wouldn't have had without us asking certain questions that cued her into different parts of her healing and her grief. Um, and that was really beautiful, but it was also hard because, you know, you're seeing these things and you're like, oh, if you could just, do this, but it's her life and it's,
Or if you could articulate it this
yeah.
way, and it being a documentary and it wanting to honor her story,
Mhm.
um, it was more about being patient
Yes. Yeah.
and letting Chelli go on the journey that she needed to go on during the season we were filming with her, rather than us sort of kind of maybe having an inkling of where things on the journey are going to go. And there were definitely surprises, that's certain as well. There were things that caught us off guard.
Very surprising.
That so not forcing a story. And I think that was a really beautiful process to learn.
It sounds really like a really fascinating process and change of what you guys have usually done. You guys did some crowdfunding for your film. Can you talk to me a little bit about that process? Because I'm sure we'll have a lot of filmmakers at this festival who are going to be contemplating and considering that. Can you talk to me about when you came to that decision to go that route, and how it worked for this film?
Yeah, the film's been primarily self-funded. We didn't really seek a lot of outside funding for most of that process. We did get fiscal sponsorship from an organization in Chicago called Full Spectrum Features. They were so supportive of us. And now we actually have fiscal sponsorship through Film Independent now, because Full Spectrum discontinued their fiscal sponsorship program. So we made a jump over to Film Independent. And for us, the crowdfunding was not necessarily about it was about allowing our community to participate with the film and to build a community and a network of support and a network of people who are invested in the movie. So we didn't go into crowdfunding feeling like we needed to rely on that funding. The funding was helpful. The money we raised was helpful. And anytime you're raising money that's not your own for a project, that's very helpful. And we're really grateful for our supporters from that. But it was also a way to let people contribute in their way into something that is so often, as an artist, isolating and you're alone. This was a way to let people connect and also to then honor them in return. So what we did is, instead of going about a regular Seed and Spark or Kickstarter crowdfunding campaign, we made kind of our own. We used fiscal sponsorship, the fact that you can contribute to the movie and get a tax-deductible donation, as a benefit in return to our supporters, and offered some rewards in the same way that you might offer on a Kickstarter or a Seed and Spark, in return for certain levels of contributions. And then it allowed people to consider, how much do I want to give? And it allowed us to kind of give back, whether it's a spot on our special thanks page on our website, or a copy of the soundtrack, and things like that. That was a way for us to give back and to then people feel connected. And then when the movie finds its home, we're doing that with sort of a built-in network and community that can spread the word.
And that's also not to say that it wasn't needed.
Yeah,
it was absolutely needed.
Yes.
The way that we made this movie, as we mentioned, we kind of stumbled into this, and it unfolded as we were creating the movie. And so we didn't have kind of the typical process of fundraising beforehand, developing the story and then going into production. We were kind of doing everything at once. And so alongside filming, we were seeking funding throughout all of that, but it was quite a lot to manage as you're also creating the film. And a lot of the funding options out there are super helpful, but most of them are for projects in development. So we just weren't really fitting into the box for much of the
labs or
the grants that are out there. So having this crowdfunding that mostly actually covered most of our post-production costs was incredibly helpful. And like Jason said, just having a community that could come around us to support us as a group was just made it feel like this was like a group effort,
and that we weren't alone.
We weren't alone. Exactly.
Well, I always think that's important, especially a film with this kind of topics, that creating community can also be very valuable, as well as, for Chelli to share her story, to make people feel like they're not alone, and just kind of, it helps empower people. So I think that's a beautiful way to do it. So I really commend you for doing that. Now you've done some other films, and there was a film you did, I believe, in 2020 about voter suppression. Can you talk about that? Because obviously we have another election coming up, and can you talk to me about that film? And is there going to be a sequel for this year?
Well, so that film was spearheaded by Reverend Otis Moss Jr., who is a pastor in Chicago of Trinity Church there, and it's actually his family's story. So it was a story passed down from three generations.
Yeah.
Now four with his son.
Generation.
And it was his family's story, and so we were approached by him to direct it and to help make it. But it follows his grandfather as he walked 20 miles in one day to try to vote in 1946, and was not able to vote. He was turned away from every polling place that he went to. So it is about voter suppression and about the racism that was happening during that time, but that also continues to today. It is a Super Soul Sunday film. So Oprah actually grew up going to Reverend Otis Moss Sr.'s church and heard this story told by him of his father who had experienced this. And so she was very connected to the story. It was a personal story for her. So he actually got to go on the Otis, and there's lots of Otis Mosses. Otis Moss,
Reverend Otis Moss Jr.
Yeah, no, Reverend Otis Moss the third. Sorry,
the third, yes, not the third.
He got to go on with her and speak about this story, and yeah, we'll see if there's more. It's such a personal story to their family that we were just happy to come on and kind of bring our directorial expertise, and that's really what we brought to that, was just our filmmaking expertise or directorial expertise. But really it was him, it was his story, and he it's all him. So yeah,
the movie's still reflective of so much of the voter suppression that's going on today in our country. And I think I'm not sure if a sequel is needed, because the movie is it's not politically leaning in a certain direction for a party. It just talks about that voting is a sacred right and that you should go vote. And I think that it's a timeless piece in that sense. It can be used to galvanize people to take advantage of their right to vote, and also to help people find resources on how they might be able to vote without any sort of suppression that's being aimed at them. And it can be used, year over year on election after election, because it's telling a story that happened in the past. And so what's nice is it can be used as a piece in any election.
When you're talking about this film and talking about your current film, the thing that comes up to that crosses my mind is trust, because you're getting both of them to open up about very personal stories, and you need to have trust so they can feel safe to open up. Can you talk to me about nurturing that trust and that confidence that they have in you to tell their stories?
Yeah, absolutely. I think the most important thing about having a subject or someone that you're working with in that vulnerable matter trust you is to always ask consent. So all throughout our documentary with Chelli, we were always checking in with her of, would you be willing to talk about this? Do you feel comfortable talking about this? If you don't want to answer this question, you don't have to. And she always chose to answer the questions that we asked her, and she always chose to be vulnerable, because I think she knew what a powerful story it was and that it needed to be shared. And similar with Reverend Moss, I think that he knew that it was a powerful story that needed to be shared, and he had seen, we had worked with him before, and he had seen how we were going to honor that story, and we weren't going to try to twist it or turn it or make it into anything different. But even in that, we checked in with him all along the way, like, is this how you imagine it? Is this, you know, does this feel right? Does this feel like what it needs to be? And so I think consent is the most important thing when it comes to trust.
And then, so you guys got two different careers, one commercial and then one independent documentaries. Can you talk about how maybe they feed into each other and help enrich the two different, I guess we'll call them genres?
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Hmm.
Do you want to?
Yeah, I
Okay.
think so.
Yeah.
I think that commercial is so short form, and obviously documentary or indie filmmaking, short filmmaking, even indie narrative filmmaking is it's such a long haul thing, that on one hand, making a commercial is like very fulfilling because you get to make something quickly and then you get to like look at it and be like, look what I made. So like that actually helps refill me along the way of working. Like it kind of keeps me creatively alive as I am trying to get to the slog of going through 80 hours of footage on our documentary with our editor, you know, as an example. But then also I think that we really like care about story, and whether it's in commercials or it's the story of a brand or a product, or it's the story we're telling in our personal filmmaking, we're always trying to let the story dictate the decision making that we're put like in the creative choices that we're making. And I think that problem solving the story of a product or a brand in a commercial sometimes really helps us like think about how to problem solve in the indie filmmaking side of things, and then vice versa. And the tools are about thinking about story are different. And so what's nice is that we can kind of come at things from a different perspective and bring something to the table that like solves, because there's so much problem solving in storytelling and in filmmaking. That's really what a lot of it is, that we can kind of use the tools respective of each format and bring them into kind of cross them over and use them. And then that allows us to have sort of a different perspective and think about something differently. So I know that's a little bit abstract, but I think that that's one of the ways that they kind of feed into each other.
It makes sense to me. It really does. Have you guys ever been to Palm Springs before?
We have, yeah. We haven't spent too much time there, but we have been, yeah.
Well, I hope you guys have a great time when you come out here. Your film sounds terrific. I'm really looking forward to it. And just a reminder for everyone, March 21st to 25th is the American Documentary and Animation Film Festival. Tickets are going pretty quick, so please get on there and get your tickets. We don't want you to miss out. Thank you both for joining me today, and we look forward to seeing you in Palm Springs.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
It's
you
an honor to play at the festival.
Yeah, it is.